Hello and welcome to another episode of What Do People Do podcast with Leo Edgar,
Eddie Duncan,
Charlie Goldson.
So if you've not seen our podcast before, we're just three mates who met at university, and we basically started it because we want to work out what people do with their lives, and we spend most of our time interviewing people in different job roles and understanding kind of how they got there, what skills they needed, any cool stories, best and worst bits of the jobs, that kind of thing. But today it's a bit of a different episode.
We're not
doing that.
Couldn't find anyone.
We've got a few interesting guests lined up, so stay tuned. But today, the focus of the podcast is going to be about kind of deep and meaningful conversations, especially as lads, that we don't really have with each other. Some of the topics might be deep, some of them might be a bit more lighthearted. But I think as lads or as mates, you usually spend a lot of your time when you meet up, either at the pub drinking, just having kind of banter about what you're watching on TV or the sport that's on. Or you might just kind of have a laugh and a joke with each other, usually taking the mick out of each other, kind of saying, "Oh, nice trim, mate," even if it looks awful, that kind of thing. I feel like most of the chat that lads have with each other usually is quite degraded, isn't it? Yeah. I feel like you never really meet your mates and go, "Wow, you're looking."
Lads are different though.
I know, but I don't think you ever walk and see your mate and be like, "Wow, mate, I really like what you've done with your hair today." Like, everyone would just laugh at you, wouldn't they? Yeah. Like it's not. Whereas I feel like there's more
different. Yeah.
I don't know if it's an important topic or whether it isn't, but I think it's interesting to see if lads have more of these meaning and deep conversations, whether kind of things will start to change or whether it'd be better for the world, or actually there's a reason why we don't have these conversations, and I'm sure we'll find out today. Yeah. But what we've done is we've all written down 2 questions or topics which we're kind of interested in or want to find more out, and we're going to read out the question and then discuss it, really. So
see how it goes.
Let us know in the comments what you think about these topics, if you think they're relevant, or if you kind of have had these conversations with your mates, or if you haven't, if you might want to have a go and see what you guys find out. But we'll start with Charlie, see what he's written down. He's got his little bucket. He's got his little book here. So
shout out ChatGPT, mate.
Right.
These aren't even from my brain.
It's just AI written.
I typed in. I was like, suggest conversation topics around like self-help, motivation, job. Listed like 20, and I was like, I'll have that one and that one. Perfect. My first one's pretty chilled. It's just, how important is passion in someone's job, and can you be successful without it?
Oh, start with Eddie.
I think money can replace passion. So I think money can almost make someone passionate about their job. I think in some people's lives, I feel like they wouldn't do something if they weren't passionate about it. For example, the guest we had previously, Jacob.
Yeah.
He's a great example of that because he's had a passion.
Yeah.
And he's genuinely happy from what I see from the conversation we had 2 weeks ago. He's genuinely happy in the job role, and he's turned a passion into a job. And I love that. I think that's great. But I think some people don't have a passion that is
going to pay them any money.
Is going to pay them any money. For example, growing up for me, my passion was sport or football. Maybe I could have tried a bit harder. Yeah. But
I mean, the percentage is so low.
The millions of kids in the UK that have a passion to be in a sport or do something like that, it's just unrealistic. So then they have to go into a job in the future which may not be aligned with their passions, but I
think we all have that realization, don't we? When
the money that you can make obviously gives you some passion towards it.
I think there's probably a high percentage or majority of the percentage of the population who would rather be doing something else than being at work. Yeah. Yet doesn't mean that they don't like their job, but they also know that kind of that grind and that putting the hours in at work allows them to kind of enjoy the things that they do outside of work. Because I think if you were doing the same thing all the time, that was your passion, in inverted commas, which is the only thing you found fun in life, and then doing it day in, day out, it would then become less fun. Like you hear a lot of people who do the things that they think they love, but because they do it so often, it becomes kind of a love-hate relationship. And like you see professionals who kind of once was a passion, it's now a job, and their perception changes. So they still have the passion, I guess, but their relationship with that passion has become more work-related, and I'm doing this for money rather than I'm doing this because I love it now.
Yeah, I feel like there's two. So I see it more from the side of, I feel like you can you can definitely be successful without passion, but there's always a big talk about like burnout. Like there's only so much time you can spend doing something that you don't like. Before eventually it's just going to become too much. Like money's great, but if you're doing something that you hate, money is not enough to sustainably just keep doing it.
I think that's why
you do need some sort of interest at least in what you're doing to long term stick with it.
I think that's why it's so important that your job isn't just the only thing that you have going for you in life. Like if you've got no passion about your job and your job is the only thing you do, then that's going to burn you out. You need to have the work, fun life balance where if you're in a job that you're not 100% passionate about, you've got something in the evening, you've got family, you've got kids to play with, you've got a sport, you've got a passion that you want to find. I think it really burns people out when they're not passionate about the job they're doing. Maybe they feel like they're not paid enough. And they feel they're doing too much work. They're working overtime and not getting rewarded, and they're not spending enough time with their family and doing the things that they're passionate about.
I heard something interesting where those people who earn lots of money in work, kind of putting long hours in, actually find work addictive. And there's this sense where like they've done scientific tests and you can find the same hormones that are produced when people take cocaine and those addictive drugs in those people when they're at work, because like they can't see anything else outside of work. It's that much kind of part of their life that if they're not there, they feel like I'm missing out. I need to be at work. I need to get that money. I need to do this. And it actually becomes an addiction. And when people actually step back from it and go, whoa, actually, this isn't healthy. Like there's a fine balance, I think. And I think that's why having passion and having work separately, as well as having kind of some sort of interaction with it, is very important.
I wouldn't say I'm at that point, but what I would say that kind of links to that is with me and my job at the moment. If I were so I took annual leave Thursday, Friday, the last few weeks. And I work obviously Monday to Wednesday, and then I take the Thursday and the Friday off, and it would just feel peculiar to me. So it's almost like that addiction is, I wouldn't say I'm addicted to my work, but I would say it almost is a bit of a passion of mine, because as soon as I stop and I think now what?
It's so true.
I wake up in the morning on a day off and I'm like, I always should really be at work.
I always think that at work. People always say to me, I wish I was retired. I wish I'd stopped working. And I'm like, well, what would you do? And they're like, just sit and watch TV all day. I'm like, you'd hate that. So you'd actually hate that.
It is so boring.
There's only so many days you can sit and watch TV and be like, this is the best thing in the world.
Occupy your brain.
Yeah, I think as humans, we're always striving to kind of do something or feel like we're achieving things. And if you sat watching TV, even like when your mates are like, what have you been doing all day? And you just say, I sat watch TV. Eventually they're going to be like, come on, mate.
Do something.
Like, there's only so many programs on Netflix as well. Like, and most of them are crap anyway. So
especially now.
Mate, Netflix, if you're watching, you need to update everything.
What is it?
More recently.
Night Agent.
Do you not enjoy it?
He hated
it's the worst acting.
I'm actually quite enjoying it.
Some people loved it.
I watched 10 episodes in 2 days. It's the worst thing I've ever watched in my life. It's so bad.
Don't tell the missus that she loved it, mate. She's like, this is the best thing I've ever seen.
She's stupid then, mate.
I'll have to bleep that one out.
No, the acting quality is awful.
That's a good topic though. I like the aspect of having a passion in your job. But I think, like you say, there are people who work like relentless hours, who know that they don't actually enjoy what they're doing, but it's providing for the car they want, the mortgage that they're paying for, it's buying the kids the Christmas presents that they want, it's buying the holidays.
So it's supplementing
like for them,
passion.
that kind of graft and that shit job in their eyes is worth it, because although they haven't got the passion for it, everything else in their life that they have got passion for is kind of like,
it's trade,
I'll trade those hours for that money so that with the other time in my life, it's going to be as joyful as it can be. Definitely.
Should we move on to the next question?
Yeah, let's move on. Questions. Mine's a bit deep.
Here we go. I knew this. ChatGPT versus Leo's brain.
Yeah, I actually thought this question myself, so didn't have to ask a computer. Okay, just opening the book.
You can answer it first, mate.
So,
he's looking at me.
This one is a bit more deep. So the question I'm going to ask first is, why are the rates of men's mental health problems increasing? And that's just the first part of it. But included with that is kind of, what can our generation do to help provide the best support to bring kind of percentage of men's mental health down? And what I wanted to touch on first is, do you think mental health is increasing, or the amount of people with mental health problems in men is increasing because there's just more people talking about it, more awareness, or do you think people actually are just getting more ill mentally?
Me personally, I think there is a massive link between exposure and media and social platforms and more branches of help and sort of awareness of it.
Yeah.
Obviously is going to link to higher rates of
people being aware of what's going on.
People being aware of their mental state and diagnoses of depression and anxiety and things like that.
Yeah.
I think there obviously is a massive link between the two. However, I feel like we're getting into a time where there's a lot of judgment lying around, and I feel a lot of it stems from social media.
Yeah.
I think a lot of what you do in your day-to-day life, you're kind of thinking back to, especially young people who are influenced, you're thinking back to a video you saw online and you're trying to copy it and be like, I should be doing this, but I'm currently not. I shouldn't be. I'm currently not where these people were
at my age.
Online at my age. Am I doing something wrong? And I think for some people, I think it can turn into a negative spiral, and it can just get worse and worse. I think for some people, I feel some people they do. Some people have stronger minds than others, but that doesn't mean that someone who's got a stronger mind won't suffer. They're probably more likely to suffer in silence than someone who,
I think some might say people who are suffering are the stronger ones because they're the ones speaking about it and not hiding it and kind of plucking up the courage to get the help that they need, whereas the people that are suffering in silence might be labelled as weaker because they can't, or they've not had the strength or that ability to speak with someone and kind of get the help that they probably know they need. But I think it's a very, very interesting topic. And for me, myself, I suffer with anxiety a lot. And I know everyone kind of throws it around these days, but I used to be kind of a very happy-go-lucky person, didn't really think about anything. I could get through the day, just wasn't... It's a weird, because when I describe it, I used to be able to just like go to uni or do things, and I wasn't thinking about what I was doing. I was just doing it. Whereas now, having the anxiety, I don't know where it came from, but everything I do, I'm constantly thinking about why I'm doing or how I'm doing it, and your brain's kind of on overdrive, kind of worrying about things that don't actually matter. Like it could be something stupid, like, am I going to be able to make it to the bus without passing out? Or like, I've never passed out, but for some reason your brain goes to that, and it's like sends it into overdrive. It's like the fight or flight response, and you know that your body's meant to have these responses because when we were living tribally, we were kind of had to survive, and you had to have these fight or flight responses. Otherwise you wouldn't be able to find food, you wouldn't be able to find shelter, and you would just die. That's why we have these feelings that the body gives us. But in today's modern society where food's so accessible, shelter's so accessible, and having these things, but the body's kind of not evolved kind of with the amount or the speed that we've been evolving in terms of technology and facilities and that kind of thing. And so I think a lot of our bodies are still kind of think they're living in the tribal age, and still having to kind of fight for food when you know there's just like a burger in the fridge waiting for you. But you're like, your body's kind of pumped with adrenaline. Like,
at the end of the day, we're animals, aren't we?
Exactly.
We've got instincts.
And what I think is interesting, if you look back in time, like in the 30s, 40s, when there's like world wars going on, and the rates of depression, anxiety for men are so much lower than they are now when we haven't got that kind of stuff going on. Is it because they weren't aware?
It's definitely to do with like the more awareness around the topic.
Do you reckon?
Exactly. Yeah, so I've got quite a nice story about that. Nice, don't know if that's the right word, but so my granddad during the World War II, he was a navigator in the RAF, flew in a bomber in Halifax, and he was, I think, if I get the story right correctly, he was on his way back from the Berlin airlift, and the Germans had just developed a plane at the end of World War II that you can fly underneath, and they were shooting upwards, and the RAF had no defence to that because they had no guns pointing downwards. So my granddad got shot down. Still to this day, apparently the most recently shot down plane over the UK.
Oh, really?
But he was one of the only ones to survive out of that plane. That's how he was clinically deaf because of it. Landed on a fence pole on the side of like a main road, like a motorway. And an army truck came past, picked him up, and obviously could see that he was in shell shock and he had no idea what was going on. They were like, just go to the pub and drink your sorrows away. And
the amount of people.
That's how
crazy.
Much time has changed, because that would be the last thing you'd be.
Imagine your
told to
GP.
do these days.
Go to GP. I've got anxiety and depression. Yeah, just go to the pub, mate, with your mates. Have a few pints, and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, you won't. I think the amount of people that must have suffered with mental health issues after those kind of world wars.
It's traumatic. The things
like obviously they've got like PTSD, but like the actual mental health kind of long-term diagnosis that none of them would have been given. And
could you imagine a war now to that magnitude?
Yeah.
With all of the knowledge around mental health and everything now, like the country would be in ruins.
Yeah.
All the men and women who go and fight for the country.
I mean, it's hard enough now with getting mental health support, like with the services. Imagine if everyone has had to go to war and saw their friends dying, and like, I think it would just be ridiculous.
I think from a men's point of view, I feel like it's always going to be an issue, though. I can't.
Yeah, this is what I wanted to talk about, especially men specifically.
Where like all men are going to be open about everything, because even me personally, like,
I find it hard.
Like I don't know, like it just doesn't seem like an option, but it's just like sometimes when you think about things, you're like like you're upset about something, or like something's like beating you down, but then like I'll just be like, well, someone else has got like someone else's life is worse than mine, like what am I even like getting annoyed about?
I think that's
it's just like you almost tell yourself like, what are you going to gain by telling anyone? Like, what, it's not going to solve your problem, but then it's almost like you kind of like
I've had interesting questions come on from that.
Supposed to talk about it. I don't know.
Yeah, I've put on it. Let me just read out some stats first, and then I'll talk about the question I was going to ask after. But I put on here, this is from Mind on their website in 2020, the survey they've done. And it says here that 43% of men regularly feel worried or low. 10% of those men have suicidal thoughts when they're feeling low. And then 1 in 8 have a diagnosis of depression or anxiety, and that's a lot of people. That is ridiculous, considering like if we were to speak with all our friends, if we had 10 of our friends in a room now, like the stats are saying at least one of them is going to say that they're suffering with something, which is a lot higher than I think people really realise. But talking about, or going on from what you just said, where you kind of have that thing in your mind where you say someone else is worse off, so I'm not going to bring it up. Do you think it would be good as a generation, or like, how weird would it be if we all just sat down as mates, like the 10 of us in a room, and we were like, right, lads, we're going to have an hour now where we just talk about how we're feeling. I'm going to start talk about my anxieties day in, day out. And like, people would, I don't know whether they'd laugh or smile or like,
I don't think it would. Me personally, I don't see how that works, because whenever I go and see a mate, you spend 2 seconds with that conversation and then move on. You're like,
how are you?
Mate, how are you doing? You feeling all right? Yeah, all right, mate.
Next one.
Nice one.
But do you think,
and then you talk about the footy.
Yeah.
But do you think that needs to change? Do you think it'd be better if men were like, how are you? And they said, yeah, I'm all right, and you, but like, don't you give me a bit more? Do you think that would be good or not?
I don't think in a big group, no.
No, but I mean, you can have those
in a group of 10 mates sat around a table.
No, I mean, like, you can have those conversations individually within that big group, is what I'm saying.
Right.
So like,
that's a difficult one.
Because obviously if there's a group of 10, you're never all in the same conversation, rarely. But if, like, to say if we had met up, there was 10 of us, and then Charlie walks in, I'm like, oh, you're right, Charlie, how are you? And he goes, yeah, I'm good. And I go, like, how's your mental health? Like, I feel like you'd laugh, or like, I feel like men would just, because we don't say that.
Yeah.
I feel like there'd be that stigma. There's this huge stigma around, why is he asking me that? Is something wrong with him? Has he got anxiety and depression? Does he want me to know something? Whereas I think because there's this stigma, and no one, lads our age, or pretty much all lads, like, you can ask all boys in the golf club or in a Sunday league football team. Imagine if you were sat in a Sunday league football team and you're like, lads, I'm really struggling with my anxiety. Like, he's laughing now, but that's the reality of it.
Because no one would
do that. No one does do that. And I think that's the problem. Like, if someone was to say that, if you were sat like in a cricket team on a Sunday morning, you're playing like a 2020, and someone's like, I'm really suffering with depression, lads.
Yeah.
People would be like, whoa, like, it's just because it's so unspoken about.
Yeah. I think
that's part of the problem.
I feel like the reception of it isn't necessarily the worst part, because I feel like now, especially with the awareness, if someone did speak up, I feel like most people would offer some sort of support.
Yeah.
It's getting that confidence for that person.
It's so hard to build the confidence.
I'd say out of our friendship group, I mean, I can't speak for everyone else, but
yeah.
I feel like if anyone had a problem, there's at least 1 or 2 people in the group that they
could feel
comfortable to go and speak to. But I still feel like they wouldn't do it.
I think the sad reality is that there's not many percentage of lads in this country who feel like they have that person they could go to.
Very true. A lot of people feel lonely.
And I know there's these big movements where people like, you see the text on Instagram saying, "You're right, mate," and it's like they share that on the story saying,
"You're okay, mate." What's UKG?
Yeah, it's like if
that's quite cool.
Yeah, I think there's these movements in there that to prevent suicide or like mental health awareness. They say just text me whenever I'm available. But whether men actually do that and will text their friends if they're feeling down, I don't know if what it is, I don't know whether it's genetic or if there's just something about men that they always feel, it feels like people hold back, don't they? They don't, they're not the first ones.
Our egos a little bit as well. I feel like for as long as we exist, like your ego and sort of the way people look at you is always from a man's perspective.
Because people will perceive, some people out there will perceive you as weak.
Because of it.
But I think it's like you said, like, because we're animals, like if you look at the animal kingdom, the ones that like get the female or are the alpha of the pack are the ones that are kind of strong and they kill the other man or they kill the other animal to get the top dog place, and then they're seen as this person that's got no problems, they're the best, and all the women are going to fancy them because they're the biggest animal, they're the top of the food chain. Whereas I feel like men will feel like if they're becoming vulnerable or they're giving the side of them that might seem as like weaker.
It's like TikTok when like girls are like, "Oh, like why don't you just speak to us and like say what you're saying?" And then like all the comments of lads are like, "Don't talk about your feelings, don't talk about your feelings. Like she's gonna leave you, she'll leave you." Like, but then again, I feel like that doesn't help because realistically, I feel like I can speak to my girlfriend and tell her something. I probably wouldn't, but I feel like I could speak to her if I needed to. But like, if you've got all this younger generation getting this impression that if you get a girlfriend, don't tell her how you feel because she'll leave you. Like that's such a negative,
I don't know where that's come from.
It's mental. I mean, I do partially agree with it, but
do you reckon?
I feel like some girls are very like
they want that
period of like. Typically, we're a lot less emotional creatures as such. Like it's not really like it's not one of our biggest tendencies is to be like you're supposed to be the emotional support, not the emotional person.
But where's that come from?
But
I mean, that's just like
roles, I guess. Like, and even if you looked way back, it's like if you had a caveman saying he doesn't feel comfortable doing something, like she's not going to hang around.
He'd be at the bottom of the pile.
He's going to be straight at the bottom. So I feel like as much as it's so long ago, like that does carry on a little bit.
Yeah, for real.
Again, it goes back to these natural instincts that we've got as mammals, as animals.
Yeah.
Speaking from personal experience, though, I feel in myself quite fortunate that I've not had personally really any sort of anxiety or depression in my life. I feel quite emotionally stable. However, I have had one or two times during university, I think, especially when I was stressed during exams and things like that, where I did feel a bit rough and I did feel a bit rotten at times. And I think it wasn't that I had depression, it was that I was depressed at one, like I just had the feeling of depression or anxiety at that time. And with me, I'm quite an open person. I'm quite an oversharer. So in that nature, I spoke to someone about it, and by the end of the day, the next day, I was up and on my feet again. And I feel like if I hadn't said something,
but I think that's credit to you.
Probably would have
kind of carried on feeling that way. But that just shows a problem like spoken to is a problem halved, and I think it's so important to speak. And I know myself, like when I've been struggling like mentally, speaking to someone just honestly makes such a difference. And I don't know what it is or what the scientific evidence.
It's the relief in it. Like I feel like once you keep it in, but just speaking to someone,
like I could be in my car, like about to have a panic attack, phone someone and tell them how I'm feeling, and suddenly like I can feel a lot calmer. And all I've done is spoken to someone, and they've kind of given me words of confidence and kind of told me.
What would you compare that to? Something completely different, but has the same sort of effects.
What, a panic attack?
No, like the feeling of sort of opening up and sort of getting a relief from it. I'm trying to think. Like,
what do you mean?
Opening a present on Christmas Day and your parents got the right one. They bought the right version of COD. You worried they were going to buy the wrong one.
Not quite. I think it probably maybe like if you were going to do a bungee jump and you stood at the top thinking this could snap and I could die here, and all your brain's telling you is this is going to snap, you're going to die, and then you jump off and you don't die. It's that kind of feeling. You're like, wow, okay. It's like a rush of, okay, I didn't actually die, but that was fucking scary.
Like an angel's just come from the gods.
Yeah, like it's just like having that. And I think what I found useful, I don't know if anyone else watching or listening has kind of done this as well, but like reaching out, speaking to people, meditation, that really helps. Cognitive behavioral therapy, that kind of thing, where you just reframe how you think. Obviously you can seek professional help and that kind of thing, which I had to do, but there's stuff online you can get for free, and I know a lot of people probably find it hard. I think there's a stat, I don't know if I wrote it down, but I think only like 1 in 13 or 1 in 15 males who suffer with depression or anxiety will actually reach out and get help from their GP, because they don't feel like they can, or they feel like you said that they feel weak, or they feel like it's not something that a man should do.
To be fair, there's such a negative sort of look on GPs these days, that like and waiting times and things like that.
Yeah, they just think
the last thing a busy man who works every day of the week, who's feeling a bit shit, the last thing they're going to want to
have to wait to get help.
Ring a GP, wait on a hotline for an hour before they can speak to someone, to then book an appointment.
Yeah, I think because there's such a lack of like adequate support, and a lot of it's online, and I think a lot of people will benefit from having things in person.
The thing is, there's so much more support than there was, but because I just think that the rate of these problems
increasing
is outgrowing the rate that new services are being developed.
Yeah, exactly.
So
I think that's why there's a struggle with people reaching out, because I think if people knew I can phone the GP by tomorrow, I'm going to have a conversation, and by the next week I'll be in a support group or having therapy where I know that it's going to actually help me, then I think people would be like, yeah, I'm doing it. But because they know like there's lots of kind of different
it's almost processes. Like the support that's available is like, it's like going from not depressed to last resort. Like there's nothing someone might be on the path to being depressed, but there's nothing to really like help you at that stage.
That's what your friends are for.
Okay, I think the last point on this topic I want to touch on is, what can we do then as a generation to kind of help men kind of who are suffering kind of feel a bit more like they're not alone? Do you think it's having these conversations where we just sit down and we just go, I'm really struggling, mate, like I just love you to know that, just so that if I need you, you can be there for me. Because I think not enough men kind of have the courage to say that to their mates, because like Charlie said initially, they feel like other people are struggling as well. I'm not in the worst situation that there is. I could be dying and all this, but just because you're not as bad as someone else doesn't mean that you're still not struggling. And I think it's so important to have these conversations. How do we reduce that stigma?
I think one thing that's actually really important that should really change, and it kind of links to the UKG, is I know, like, for example, you're quite a stubborn guy. I'm stubborn at times.
Yeah.
You're fucking stubborn. But like,
men are stubborn.
But like for someone like Charlie, or anyone who's stubborn, it might be harder for you. Probably accept this. It would be harder for you to come out and say you've got something wrong with you than maybe Leo. Leo's been through it. Leo's said it.
Yeah.
But I think being aware of your mates and seeing that your mates may not be behaving or talking the way that they were before, and you as a mate being proactive in that situation and not overlooking it and actually asking them without them having to come out themselves.
Yeah.
If you've got a friend that you're really close with and they can say anything to you and you can say anything to them, it's pretty obvious when they're not quite right. So if you know them well enough, as a mate, you'd be doing them a favour by saying, "Are you okay?" KG.
It's like you saying about asking someone how how's your mental health, but you laugh at it initially because they might think I'm completely fine, but it might be the one time that you do ask them
that they actually need it,
struggling, and the continuing when you keep asking someone, they might be fine then, but then 2 weeks later they might text you, but
and that person might be thinking they're completely alone at that point. No one likes them,
and the fact you're asking, they'll be like, I can. They'll be like,
I've actually got someone who is there, and that proves that there is someone there. And then, but the problem is when that person doesn't have that person.
Yeah, exactly.
That's where it goes.
That's where, it's difficult. That's
why I think it's important as lads to make, especially as you get older and have a family, is still to make time
for your friends,
your lads.
I was just going to say that.
Mates. Join clubs.
Like the amount of, like my dad
Stay
sees
active.
his mates, maximum 5 times a year.
Yeah.
I'd love to do something with my mates once a month.
Yeah, I'd love that.
Every week.
I know people say, you don't have the time when you've got kids, but you can make time if it's something that's important to you.
Exactly.
The biggest advice I could give anyone listening or watching is just speak to your friends. If you're struggling, just let them know. even if you think they're going to laugh at you, or even if you think they're going to just kind of spread it around that you're not feeling great, what's the worst that can happen? I think it's better to suffer with your friends knowing than to suffer in silence, honestly.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess it's proof that it works, because there are plenty of celebrities out there who have come out in the public eye and said, I was struggling, I got help, I spoke to people, I got talking. And then Jake Humphrey, who owns the High Performance podcast, I know you listen to him a lot, but I listened to a clip the other day, and he said he was just like,
get the help.
He had a really low point in his life a couple of years ago, I think. And I think he got the help he needed. It helps because he's wealthy. He could, if he wanted to, he could go private, speed up waiting times. He's got a great network of people around him. If he didn't try and sort it, maybe the BT Sport, who he works for, could have tried to help him. Some people just don't have that access. But fair play to him. He admitted he had a problem. He got it sorted out, and he's better off for it.
100%. I think for sure. It's so true. Just speaking helps. It's like Jimmy Carr said, when you see people who are struggling and the first thought is suicide, I'm going to kill myself. And he just said, well, that's like a temporary problem being solved with a permanent solution. So you're saying, okay, I'm feeling crap today, but there's going to be hundreds of days in my life that I'm going to be feeling crap, but there's also going to be hundreds of days that you probably feel all right. And to end your life because it's that bad at that time, you're creating a permanent solution to something that's only temporary. And I know at the time it can feel like this is going to be forever, but it always gets better. I think that's I've been at that position where you feel like, is it ever going to get better? But it does. And I think talking is like the first step to getting there. 100%.
Cool. Should we move on?
Yeah.
So moving on to my question. Would you rather? So what do you?
I love a would you rather.
No. What would you prefer? So working hard now, and like in your young age, working hard in your young age, and sort of sacrificing the now for the future. Or living the now and not paying the repercussions, because people can live now.
I love this question.
And then, but sort of live your life now, have as maximum fun as possible, and then maybe when you're 30, 35, 40, that's when you start knuckling down.
The question's basically work hard, play later, or play now, work later. I think work now, play later. But it depends how later. I think if you can work hard until your 40s and you can retire kind of late 40s, then you're still young enough in your 50s and 60s to enjoy your money that you've earned. But also, there's a fine line between being able to do things when you're younger.
The thing is, the way I look at it, and from what I've seen in videos, a lot of people, there's a massive mix. There's the people who have sacrificed everything at such a young age and have now got such an amazing life, giving their kids everything, and fair play to them. But there's also a lot of, there was a clip, I think he was like a 40-year-old, 35, 40-year-old millionaire who said, when you're older and you've got a lot of money, you wish you were younger and going out and
didn't have enough. Is it Gary Vee?
No, I think is it like the street interview one or whatever?
I think so. Yeah, and he was just saying, like, I wish I had more memories.
Wish he went back. Yeah, that was the memories thing.
Memories over money.
More memories and stuff.
I don't think I think, as with everything in life, yes.
There's balance.
There's a balance.
Yeah.
And my answer to the question that I asked was a mix.
Yeah.
Like I get so much enjoyment out of things that don't involve trying to make money. That I want to do a lot of it whilst I'm young.
Yeah,
however,
of course.
I also appreciate that I can't, full respect to people who go traveling for a year or two, fair enough. Because you might find something you love, and a new passion. And going back to the first question, you might find a new passion, and it might become your job, really successful. But I don't think now because I'm 23 and I've got myself a full-time job. I don't know if I could now go
to not having a job
and going traveling for a year.
It's like, where would the money come from? That's what I get scared about.
Yeah, true.
I don't think a lot of people can afford to just go traveling for a year, because either they have to get a job out there and then they can't really enjoy the traveling because they're working all the time, or they have to save up for a few years to be able to pay their rent now, but also save up whilst they're working so they can go travelling.
I think, again, for me personally, it's work now, like
party later.
But again, you don't have to sacrifice everything.
Yeah.
It's just like,
there's certain things like
it's like, do you need to go out every weekend and spend 200 quid to enjoy your life? No, like you just don't. Like everyone can sacrifice certain parts of their life to better themselves personally, and I feel like
I wouldn't even call it sacrifice. If you're saving that 200, if you're saving 200 quid,
it's the way you view it.
Yeah, but if you save 200 quid a month rather than buying a 200 quid bottle of vodka in a club, like that is just a no-brainer. Come on, like fuck me.
Never done that. By the way,
I want the sparklers on my EU coming out, mate.
But there's people that actually think that gives them validation, like sitting in a club in a VIP area, like sparklers.
I suppose it depends what you're doing it for. Like that's the ultimate thing. Like,
if you're doing it to flex, then
I mean, I'd only ever do that if I knew that like the disposable income that I was getting,
you were stinking rich.
I was that money literally doesn't mean anything to me, and I'm only doing this because like I'd rather not just buy like a little vodka lemonade. I want the full bottle because that's me. I'm the big man. It's like otherwise, if that 200 quid is going to be better off going towards your pension, like come on, mate, it's a no-brainer.
Taking it to another step. Say you're, I don't know, 30. You've got young kids. You've got a wife. You're happy. Would you take it to the extreme and move abroad alone for a year for work, to sacrificing time with your family and your passion
to make the money
for your family's future?
I think moving away will be too difficult because you need that family time to maintain the relationship.
Say if you were on already a nice salary, but they were going to double that if you went abroad for a year.
100%, mate.
You think you would?
100%.
I think there's a fine line between being able to maintain that relationship
for 1 year of your life.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. For one year. For 1 year. For 1 year.
I'd be booking the first plane out.
Sorry, love, I'm off. What?
I'd sit in the luggage carry for double your salary, no question. I feel like it's yours. You were saying about that guy about being a millionaire and wishing he could go back, but you can also look at it from the other side of that person that went out and then they're 40 and can barely afford to pay their rent.
Yeah.
And they were like, well, I wish I didn't spend that 200. I wish I got focused more on my
job
and getting qualifications instead of just focused on spending all my money. So
yeah, 100%.
I think people always, again, it's like people always want something they don't have or didn't do. Like there's always something that someone's not happy.
I think the main reason as to why it's work whilst you're younger is because you don't have those commitments.
Yeah.
So it's like you can work hard when you're 40. That's not to say you've flapped it if you don't start working hard till you're 40.
It's just your
but it's a hell of a lot harder when you're 40 if you've got 3 kids and a wife and a mortgage to pay compared to when you've got no.
Or it's like now, if you really went for something and it didn't work out and you had no money, like right, you just move back in with your parents.
Yeah.
Realistically, you're not exactly any further back from where you started.
Yeah.
You just go like you always have the opportunity to go and get an office job or go and like train to be an electrician or something. Like those options don't really go away, but like certain passions, like you're never going to get as much freedom as you do now and be able to risk as much as you can now than you ever will ever again in your life.
Yeah, for sure.
That's why I say work now and enjoy it later, because it's like if it doesn't work out, then I can just go back to the same job I've got now. Like it's nothing that's stopping me from doing that.
I think my second question leads onto this really nicely, and it's more of a topic really, and it's the pressure to be financially successful or stable as a young adult. And one of the statistics I found was that the median household disposable income for adults between 40 and 49, so this is kind of in your prime, is 33,400, and then the actual average disposable income at any point in your life is only 32,000, which is
in total.
Yeah, which is a grand less.
So does that break that down? Theory. So disposable income is after you've paid your bills and things like that. It's what you've got left to spend
annually. Yeah.
I think 33,000 sounds like a lot. I mean, it's a lot of money to me, but it's quite scary how insignificant £33,000 actually is. Like, it doesn't go as far as you probably think it would. Like, I don't know.
100%.
Maybe I'm shooting a bit.
What do you think about the pressure though, as like a young adult who's kind of seeing the peers around them getting job promotions, and they've got this goal in or they've got this idea in their head that they want to be at a certain position by the time that they're 30, by the time they're 40.
I think at this age, the only pressure that you're feeling is the pressure you put on yourself, not from other people. I think as you're getting older and you've got more people relying on you, that's when you've got pressure from outside people, other people. I think at this point in time, I don't feel pressure from anyone really.
Do you feel pressure?
Myself?
Not that anyone puts on me. I was going to say that I feel like, if anything, more
from yourself,
sort of like influence we have now is people saying, don't like stop putting so many constraints on yourself. Like, stop worrying about where you are right now.
Yeah.
Because you're not helping yourself. Like, it's not getting you any further by doing it. But all of mine are just self-imposed pressures of where I'd like to be.
Yeah.
But it's not like my parents are like, you haven't reached this milestone.
Yeah. If anything, my parents are so proud of where I am.
So am I. I'm like, why? Like, what are you proud of?
What have I actually done?
Yeah.
Because I think the issue is because everyone's all in this same kind of pond of you leave school and everyone's kind of on a similar salary between 20 and 30 grand. And
graduate wages.
Like the average age between 20 and 30, I think everyone's pretty much between 20 and 30 grand. But then like it's that point where you take the step up and you go, right, I'm going to take a bit more senior role now and earn a bit more money. It's like, when's acceptable to be like, shit, I probably need to go for this now.
I think it's a good thing to have. Like, I think from any age, it's good. It's a good thing to be aware of.
Yeah.
And to have targets, but to like, it can also have a negative effect of like, again, nothing's ever good enough. And at what point are you then like, do these pressures actually help you, or are they just holding you back?
Yeah.
Some people, pressure is the best thing ever. To
pressure
be fair,
makes diamonds.
I feel I benefit from a type of pressure, time pressure.
Same.
So
uni essays.
Like, I couldn't start something in advance.
Honestly,
I physically
people that can write an essay a month before it's due, I have no idea how they do it.
That is a different breed of people, because
there's no way they score better anyway.
I started my disc with 6 weeks to go.
I reckon
something like that.
This is
pressure makes diamonds.
Yeah, baby. Exactly, mate. And I this isn't a certified statistic, but I reckon like people that hand their essay in with like 10 minutes to go usually score higher.
Where are you basing that from?
Because that pressure.
It's a table of first class.
There's no way the people that hand their essay in like two weeks in advance are like scoring high.
Fraud at uni. I don't know how I managed to get it first.
Because I did all your essays for you, mate.
We'll bleep that bit out.
It doesn't matter. You got the paper now, mate.
Yeah, exactly. You've got your name on it, mate. I googled what percentage of people, or how many people in the UK earn over 100 grand. And it says about 1%, which is about 670,000 people that are earning over 100 grand.
That's a lot.
But
670,000.
But there's
in the population.
That's the whole of the UK, though.
So, what was it, like 73 million?
And if you think about majority of them probably live in London as well.
Yeah.
Or they're obviously working as a doctor or something like a dentist where you know they're going to be on 100 grand. But then obviously there's the business people who are probably earning more than that. In these big corporate companies, that salary either. Yeah, and that's including people. That's 100k and over. So, but that's 670,000. Well, it's not actually that much. No.
Have you seen them videos of the girls? It's like, what would your man's ideal salary be? And it's like, I think 8 million would do. It's like, do you know how many people earn 8 million? And then they're like, 10-20% in the population. And he's like, are you stupid? Like,
it's like 0.0000.
Like some people's viewers on like what they think an ideal salary is. 7 million. Like, why do you deserve 7 million to start with? But the fact you think that's like an acceptable salary, normal guy's salary is mental.
The thing is, there's like, no such thing as a £7 million a year salary unless you're a sportsman. Like, to be owning that, you've got to be owning the thing.
Yeah, well, 8 mil will do.
Yeah. You've got to be like Messi or Ronaldo to earn that.
Yeah.
I think most of it comes from like sponsorships, doesn't it? Yeah. Right, let's finish with your last question.
Yeah.
Okay, so my last question is a bit unrelated, to be honest, but I think it's quite a nice one to finish on.
Yeah.
What is the most interesting thing you have learned since starting the podcast?
Oh, I like this.
I need time to think about this one, mate. Do you want to take it away?
Yeah, I'll start. Interesting thing. I think if we start with ourselves, I've realised how like motivated and kind of consistent you have to be when you start something like this.
Yeah.
I think being able to say, oh, let's start a podcast, that's a great idea, but to actually do it and put it into practice and film it and record it and put it on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, like it takes a lot.
Yeah,
I don't
think
ideas
and the planning is the easy bit. It's the actual doing bit.
Yeah, I think, and I think that's just the same with anything in life. You can apply that to anything, and having an idea is the easy bit. Actually putting it into practice, and it's like the analogy of putting a sat nav in the car. That's great. It tells you where you need to go, but actually putting the engine on and driving there, like that's the hard bit.
More to it.
So yeah, I think since starting the podcast, I think one of the most interesting things I've found is like how organized we have to be, and kind of working out who's going to do the shorts for Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, who's going to be able to edit the podcast, who's going to do the thumbnails, who's going to go out and approach people and get them on the podcast. Like there's loads of little jobs that you don't really realize until you start doing it. And we're still not perfect at it. We're still learning, we're still getting better at it. But on that side of things, that's what I found interesting, is kind of working out what goes into making a podcast. And then from guests, I think it's been just speaking to people and seeing kind of how they got into what they do. And from the ones we've had on, it's been interesting that they've all taken kind of a similar path of school and then uni, and then kind of just there's usually one thing, or there's an influence that's happened in their life that's kind of pulled them towards a certain career path. Like for Annabelle, it was watching One Born Every Minute or something. Like, it's these like, and for Jacob, it was watching someone on The Voice who had a cool jacket, and I wanted to make that. It's like, I like how there's these
Tom was influenced by his parents, wasn't he?
Yeah, exactly. And there's these like kind of instinct moments, or there's these like defining periods for people where they're like, oh, this is kind of cool, I might see if I can do this for life. And I found it so interesting how people like find that moment, because I don't think I've found that yet for myself.
That's true. I think the best thing that I've learned is just the amount of employable skills that we've learned. Like when you first started, you'd be like you wouldn't take it seriously, and obviously we're still like nowhere if you look at in terms of where we've come, but from where we started to where we are now,
huge.
Like, my CV, I've got like all these things now. I'm like, these are actually things that companies would like value and look out for, like especially in certain jobs these days. Like all the stuff that we're doing, even just the ability to sit here for an hour and talk in front of a microphone. Like just that, like confidence to just feel comfortable saying whatever you want. And
it's like therapy for us, isn't it? It's like public speaking.
Yeah,
it's like being able to.
I really enjoy it.
Yeah,
My sort of most interesting thing that I've learned is, to be fair, when we started this podcast and the idea came out, I dwelled on it a little bit, and I was like, what are people going to think? Are people going to think we're stupid for doing this? But the general reception we've had, and the people who have openly come up to us and said, it's so cool. People are way more accepting of it than, because they understand that it takes effort. And people respect it when people put effort in. I know I'm the same. When I see someone, even if it's something I disagree with completely, like I don't know, a political view that isn't mine, if they're working hard and they're doing something that they're passionate about and whatnot, like I've got
respect the grind,
ultimate respect for that. And I think I was just almost surprised in the way that people have been really sort of.
I think you have to take your hats off to people that just try things. Because,
absolutely.
Like, how many people do you know that you can go up to and who say, "Oh yeah, I run a podcast"? That's one of the aspects where I think it's so cool to say, look, it's not the biggest podcast in the world. We haven't got hundreds of thousands of views or subscribers, but
everyone started from somewhere.
I don't know many of the people personally that run a podcast, and I like to be the person that says I can do that. Oh, this is a skill that I have, and like Charlie says, it puts you on a pedestal because you've got these skills that people don't realize you're going to gain from doing something like this.
This is absolutely something in the future if we could put on our CV.
Exactly.
Like, you're part of a podcast. You're consistent.
I've already got it on mine, honestly, because like it's not even just like the whole like creating the social media side of it, like your ability to approach people and like almost the skills of like time organization, like it really boosts every part of your life. Like, I need to do this at this time. Around our jobs, it's like I need to make a TikTok, I've got to make a thumbnail, like, I need to edit the video. Like it's almost like weird how organized you have to. Without the organization,
it doesn't happen.
Fails. Like,
and it's like last week I was ill and we didn't actually film an episode, so like it shows how like consistent you have to be, because things like that in life happen, and you need to be able to have the content or the organization to go, look, this week didn't go as planned, but next week we're going to make sure it does happen.
It's impacted every part of my life. Like, it's weird, but like
I love it though.
I never went to the gym. I go to the gym 3 times a week, and I will not miss going 3 times a week.
Like that initial conversation we had has weird. Like kick-started something, like, I think for the better.
It's just different. Yeah,
for sure.
I love it.
And it seems like, and like people say, things don't change overnight. For us, it didn't change overnight. We started saying this is going to be a cool idea, and now it's actually happening. It wasn't like we're going to do it tomorrow, but like each day or each month, like things are progressing, and hopefully they keep growing, and that's the aim, really.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyway, thanks for watching. This has been quite a fun episode on deep and meaningful conversations with the lads. Yeah. Hopefully you guys watching can have a similar conversation with your mates, see what they think. I think it's going to be good to have these conversations with, especially as males, with your friends about conversations or topics that don't usually get brought up when you're at the pub or when you're just meeting up for a drink. I think it's going to be important to have these conversations and you just see what your mates think, really. I think it's been great. Like, I don't think we've ever had a conversation like this before. Yeah. So it's good just to have it kind of, for sure. And see how it went. Yeah. I think really appreciate if you guys could like the video if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe as well because we want to get to 100 subscribers. We're nearly there. So we'd really appreciate that. 8 away or something. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, leave us a little follow, and there's usually like a little poll where you can leave a response what you thought of the episode, so that would really help us.
Stay tuned. If you guys about a month's time, we've got a really cool guest coming on.
Interesting guests coming on, so stay tuned. And also if you guys want to come on, if you're watching or you think you'd really like to have a conversation about what you do or any cool stories you've got,
save us a job approaching people.
Message us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, on our email that's going to be in our link in the description. Anyway, just get in touch with us and we'll organise for you to come on, and we'll have a great conversation and learn something new, hopefully. But thanks for listening.
Cheers.